Every road on this planet leads to the same place. One city, one empire, one idea so powerful it never truly died. They called it Rome, and in the next 30 minutes, I am going to take you from a tiny village of mud huts on a riverbank to the most powerful civilization the ancient world had ever seen. From glory to catastrophe, from resurrection to reinvention. From the first stone laid in 753 BC to the city breathing right now, today, in 2026. This is not just history. This is the story of what humans are capable of. The best of it. And the absolute worst. Let's go. 753 BC. The Seven Hills. Before Rome was an empire, before Rome was a republic, before Rome was even a city, it was a myth. And all great things start with a myth. The year is somewhere around 753 BC. We're on the banks of the Tiber River in a place called Latium, central Italy. Forested hills, wolves in the dark. The legend goes like this. A Vestal virgin named Rhea Silvia is visited, by force, by the god Mars himself. She gives birth to twin boys who will change the world. But her uncle, King Romulus, wants them dead. He orders them drowned in the Tiber. But the river is flooding. The servants can't reach the deep water, so they leave the basket on the riverbank and walk away. Those two boys, Romulus and Remus, should have died right there. Instead, a she-wolf finds them. She nurses them, raises them. You've seen the statue, the famous bronze, the wolf, head turned, two babies clinging to her. That image is not just art. That image is a warning. Rome was born from abandonment, from near death, from the wild. From the beginning, it had teeth. The twins grow up. They discover who they are. They raise an army. They overthrow their uncle. And then they decide to build a city of their own. But here's where it gets dark. The brothers argue. Remus mocks the walls Romulus is building. He literally jumps over them, laughing. And Romulus kills him. His own brother, right there on the first day of Rome. And if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about this city, nothing will. Romulus names the city after himself, Roma, April 21st, 753 BC. That's the birthday. Happy birthday, Rome. The kingdom, 753 to 509 BC. The Age of Kings. Romulus starts the Senate, a council of 100 elders to advise the king. 100 men sitting together, debating, deciding. You know what that is? That's the seed of democracy, planted right here, right now. The second king, Numa Pompilius, gives Rome its religion, its calendar, its temples. He makes Rome feel like a civilization, not just a settlement. Then comes Servius Tullius, maybe the greatest of them all, who reorganizes Roman society, builds the first city walls, and creates the census. He counts the people. He sees them. That mattered. But the seventh king? The seventh king is the reason Rome burns kings forever. His name is Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud. He seizes the throne by murdering Servius Tullius, his own father-in-law. He rules by terror. He executes without trial. He ignores the Senate. And then his son, Sextus, rapes a noblewoman named Lucretia. Lucretia tells her family what happened. And then she takes a knife and kills herself. rather than live with the shame of what was done to her. That act, one woman's tragic death, lights the match. A man named Lucius Junius Brutus raises her body in the city square. He shows Rome what the king's family has done. And Rome erupts. The Tarquins are driven out. 509 BC. The kingdom is over. And something entirely new is about to begin. The Republic, 509 to 27 BC. The Roman Republic, 509 BC, no more kings. From now on, Rome is ruled by 2 consuls, elected every single year. 2 men, equal power. Either one can veto the other. Why 2? Because if one goes mad with power, the other one stops him. Genius. The Republic is born. And for almost 500 years it works. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but it works. Rome fights the Etruscans, wins. Fights the Gauls, actually loses. Rome is sacked and burned in 390 BC. Humiliating. But Rome rebuilds, always rebuilds. Fights the Samnites, wins. Fights the Greek cities of southern Italy, wins. By 270 BC, Rome controls the entire Italian peninsula. But the real test, the test that will define Rome forever, that's still coming. The Punic Wars. Across the Mediterranean, there is another superpower, Carthage, North Africa, modern-day Tunisia, rich, naval, powerful. And they want Sicily. The same Sicily Rome just claimed. 264 BC, First Punic War. Rome, a land power, has to build a navy from scratch. You know what they do? They find a wrecked Carthaginian ship. They study it, and they copy it. Then they add something called a corvus, a spiked boarding bridge that lets Roman soldiers board enemy ships like it's a land battle. Rome doesn't adapt to the sea. Rome brings the land to the sea. 23 years of war. Rome wins. But the Second War? The Second Punic War is where we meet the greatest enemy Rome ever faced. His name is Hannibal Barca. Hannibal is the son of a Carthaginian general who made his sons swear an oath of eternal hatred toward Rome. And Hannibal kept that oath. 218 BC, he marches an army of 40,000 men, plus 37 war elephants from Spain through the south of France and over the Alps. In winter. Think about that. War elephants in the Alps in winter. Half his men die. Most of the elephants die. He doesn't stop. He comes down into Italy and he devastates Rome. At the Battle of Trebia, Rome loses 20,000 men. At Lake Trasimene, another 15,000. And then, Cannae. 216 BC. One single afternoon. Hannibal surrounds a Roman army of 80,000 soldiers, using a pincer move so perfect, so geometrically devastating that military academies still study it today. By sunset, 70,000 Romans are dead. 70,000 in one afternoon. Rome is shaking. Allies desert them. The Senate almost surrenders. Almost. But Rome does something extraordinary. They don't panic. They adapt. They appoint a general named Quintus Fabius Maximus, who refuses to fight Hannibal directly. He harasses, shadows, cuts supply lines. History calls him the delayer. And they find Scipio Africanus, a 24-year-old general who studies Hannibal's tactics, then uses them against Hannibal's homeland. Rome invades North Africa. Hannibal rushes home to defend Carthage. 202 BC, the Battle of Zama. Scipio beats Hannibal. The greatest general of the ancient world loses his final battle. And 50 years later, Rome burns Carthage to the ground, salts the earth so nothing will ever grow there again. Rome does not forget. Rome does not forgive. The late Republic, when Rome breaks itself. The Republic tears apart, 133 to 27 BC. Here's the thing about power. It has a way of corrupting the very systems built to control it. Rome is now the Mediterranean's supreme power. Massive wealth pouring in, slaves by the millions. But that wealth goes to a tiny elite. The average Roman farmer, who fought those wars, who bled in those battles, comes home to find his land bought out from under him by rich senators while he was away. Two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, try to reform the system, redistribute land to the poor. The Senate has them both killed. Both of them, in the streets of Rome. When the government starts murdering reformers, reformers start becoming revolutionaries. Enter the age of the strongmen: Marius, Sulla, Pompey, Crassus. Generals who use their armies as personal political weapons. Sulla actually marches his army into Rome itself. First time in history. First time a Roman general turns on Rome with Roman soldiers. And he wins. He becomes dictator. He purges his enemies. But even Sulla eventually gives up power and retires. He dies in his bed. The next man to march on Rome won't retire. Julius Caesar. Gaius Julius Caesar. Is there a more famous name in human history? Born 100 BC to a patrician family that had fallen on hard times. Brilliant, charismatic, recklessly ambitious. He fights his way to the top of Roman politics, and then, to get out of Rome's deadly political games for a while, he takes command of an army in Gaul, modern-day France. What happens next is one of the most staggering military campaigns in all of history. 8 years. 8 years in the field. He conquers all of Gaul, an area the size of Western Europe. Over 1 million people killed, another million enslaved. He writes about it himself in the third person in his Gallic Wars. Calm, clinical, like he's talking about someone else. Because in his mind, he probably was. By 49 BC, Caesar is the most powerful man in the Roman world, and the Senate is terrified. They order him to disband his army and come back to Rome. Caesar stands at the Rubicon River, the legal boundary he cannot cross with an army. He pauses. He thinks. And then he says something that has echoed through 2,000 years of human history. Alea iacta est. The die is cast. Civil war. Caesar versus Pompey. Caesar wins. Pompey flees to Egypt, where he's murdered on the beach. Caesar becomes dictator. He starts reforming everything. The calendar, still the basis of the one we use today. Land reform, rebuilding cities. He is unstoppable, which is exactly why they stop him. The Ides of March, 44 BC. March 15th, 44 BC. Caesar walks into the theater of Pompey for a Senate meeting. 23 senators surround him. Each one draws a blade. They stab him 23 times. His friend, Marcus Junius Brutus, among them. Caesar pulls his toga over his face as he falls. He dies at the base of a statue of Pompey, the man he defeated. The senators thought killing Caesar would save the Republic. Instead, they destroyed it. Because Caesar's adopted son, a 19-year-old named Octavian, would not rest until every single one of them was dead. And then he would do what Caesar never dared to do. He would make himself emperor. The Empire, 27 BC to 476 AD. Augustus and the birth of empire. Octavian stands before the Senate. He's won. Destroyed every rival. Mark Antony and Cleopatra are dead. He is, in every practical sense, the ruler of the known world. But he doesn't call himself king, not dictator. He says he's just a princeps, a first citizen, first among equals. The Senate, grateful, gives him a new name. Augustus, the revered one. And Augustus does something remarkable. He gives Rome peace. After a century of civil war, blood, and chaos, he gives them peace. 27 BC to 180, historians call it the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. 200 years. Think about what that means. If you were born in 50 AD in Rome, you lived your entire life, birth to death, without seeing a major war on Italian soil. That is extraordinary. Augustus builds, expands, organizes. He boasts, "I found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble." The empire at its height stretches from Scotland to Mesopotamia, from the Sahara Desert to the Rhine River. 60 to 70 million people under one government, one law, one currency, one language. Roads, 50,000 miles of them connecting everything. You could travel from London to Jerusalem on a Roman road. Nothing like this had ever existed. Nothing like this would exist again for over 1,000 years. The emperors, gods and monsters. But the emperors themselves? Oh, they are something else entirely. After Augustus comes his stepson Tiberius, brilliant but paranoid, retreats to the island of Capri, running the empire by letter while allegedly indulging every vice imaginable. Then comes Caligula. Caligula. Where do you even begin? He reportedly makes his horse a consul, declared himself a living god, murders for sport, executed by his own Praetorian Guard after 4 years. Then Claudius, stuttering, overlooked, everyone's joke, turns out to be one of the most effective administrators Rome ever had. Invades Britain, builds aqueducts, expands citizenship. Then his wife Agrippina poisons him so her son can rule. Her son, Nero. 64 AD, the Great Fire of Rome. The city burns for 6 days and 7 nights. 10 of Rome's 14 districts destroyed or severely damaged. 1 million people homeless. And what is Nero doing? There are rumors, probably exaggerated but famous, that he sang and played his lyre while watching the flames. Fiddling while Rome burns. Whether or not it's true, the legend says everything about how Romans felt about him. He blames the Christians, persecutes them brutally. Peter and Paul, according to tradition, are both executed in Rome during this period. Nero is eventually declared a public enemy by the Senate. He flees. He commands a servant to kill him. His last reported words, "What an artist dies with me." Even his death was dramatic. But through all these monster emperors, the machine keeps running. The bureaucracy, the army, the roads, the law. Rome is bigger than any one man. That is both its greatest strength and the very thing that will eventually doom it. The height and the cracks. The five good emperors, 96 to 180. After the chaos comes a golden age. Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, Marcus Aurelius. 5 emperors back to back, each one choosing his successor based on merit, not bloodline. Trajan expands the empire to its absolute maximum size: Dacia, Armenia, Mesopotamia. Hadrian travels the entire empire, builds his famous wall across Britain, studies it, knows it. And Marcus Aurelius? Marcus Aurelius writes philosophy in a tent on the front lines. His Meditations, private journal never meant to be published, becomes one of the most widely read books in human history. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Written by a man running the largest empire on earth while fighting wars on multiple fronts. But with Marcus Aurelius's death in 180 AD, the Golden Age ends. His son Commodus takes over, and the cracks begin to show. The fall begins. The crisis of the 3rd century. Between 235 and 284 AD, 50 years, Rome has 50 different emperors. 50. In 50 years. Most of them murdered by their own soldiers. The empire is fracturing. Barbarian raids from the north and east. Plagues killing millions. The economy collapsing. The currency debased until it's nearly worthless. Sound familiar? Emperor Diocletian stabilizes things temporarily by splitting the empire in half, east and west, to make it more manageable. Constantine follows. He makes one decision that will echo for the next 2,000 years. 313 AD. He legalizes Christianity. The religion of the persecuted becomes the religion of the persecutors. The cross becomes the symbol of empire. Everything changes. But it's not enough to save the West. The fall of Rome, 410 AD. The unthinkable. August 24th, 410 AD. A Visigoth king named Alaric marches into Rome. For the first time in 800 years, Rome is sacked. St. Jerome, hearing the news in Bethlehem, writes, "The city that had taken the whole world was itself taken." The psychological shockwave is enormous. Romans had believed, truly believed, that Rome was eternal, eternal city, urbs aeterna. The idea that it could fall? Unthinkable. And now, the unthinkable has happened. 476 AD. The last Western Roman emperor, a boy named Romulus Augustulus, cruel irony in that name, is deposed by a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer. He doesn't even bother killing the boy. He sends him into exile, with a pension, because what's the point of a title that means nothing? Rome, the Western Roman Empire, is over. Or is it? The eternal city survives. The city remains. 476 AD. Onward. Here's what they don't tell you in most history classes. 476 AD is not the end of Rome. It's the end of the Western Empire. But the city? The city of Rome? Still there, still breathing. In the East, the Roman Empire continues for another 1,000 years. We call it the Byzantine Empire, but they called themselves Romans. In Constantinople, modern Istanbul, they keep the Roman law, Roman administration, Roman identity alive until 1453 AD, 1,000 years after the fall. And in Rome itself, a new power is rising, the Bishop of Rome, the Pope. While emperors fall and kingdoms collapse, the papacy endures. The Church takes the Roman administrative structure, provinces, hierarchy, Latin language, and uses it to govern half the known world. Rome transforms from capital of an empire to capital of a faith. The Middle Ages pass over Rome like a slow, heavy dream. The population, once 1 million strong, shrinks to perhaps 20,000. Cows graze in the Forum. The Colosseum becomes a quarry, its marble stripped to build churches. But even in ruin, Rome is magnificent. Even in decay, it is more beautiful than other cities at their height. The Renaissance. Rome reborn. The Renaissance, 14th to 17th centuries. And then, the Renaissance, the rebirth. Rome starts remembering itself. Popes become patrons of art. They commission the greatest artists in the world to beautify the city. Michelangelo paints the Sistine Chapel ceiling. 4 years, lying on his back, going blind from the paint dripping into his eyes. Raphael paints the Vatican rooms. Bramante designs St. Peter's Basilica. Rome becomes, once again, the cultural capital of the world. But there's a dark side. The money for all this art comes partly from selling indulgences, essentially paying for forgiveness of sins. In 1517, a German monk named Martin Luther sees this and nails a list of complaints to a church door. The Protestant Reformation erupts, and in 1527, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V's mercenary soldiers, many of them Lutheran Germans, sack Rome again. The sack of 1527. Just as brutal as Alaric's sack over 1,000 years before. Soldiers running through the streets, priests murdered, the Pope himself besieged in the Castel Sant'Angelo. Rome, always being tested, always surviving. The road to a nation. Napoleon, unification, and the birth of modern Italy. 1800s. The 1800s are a whirlwind for Rome. Napoleon sweeps through Italy, captures the Pope, reorganizes everything. Then Napoleon falls. The old order tries to reassert itself, but something new is stirring. Italian nationalism. The dream, the risorgimento of a unified Italian nation. Garibaldi, Mazzini, Cavour. They fight, they scheme, they die, they sacrifice. 1861. The Kingdom of Italy is proclaimed, but Rome is still not part of it. Rome is still the Pope's personal territory, protected by French troops. 1870. France is at war with Prussia. French troops leave Rome. Italian soldiers march in. The Pope barricades himself in the Vatican. And Rome, after 1,500 years, becomes the capital of a unified Italian state. The Eternal City, finally home again. The 20th century. Darkness and light. Fascism and the March on Rome. 1922. October 1922. A man named Benito Mussolini organizes a march on Rome. Tens of thousands of his black shirts converge on the capital. The King of Italy panics, the government collapses, and Mussolini is handed power. He calls himself Il Duce, the leader. He dreams of a new Roman Empire. He literally builds monuments to the ancient Romans. He makes the trains run on time, that's the famous line, and also builds grand boulevards through ancient ruins, destroying irreplaceable archaeological history in the process. He aligns himself with Hitler. And then comes the catastrophe. World War II and the occupation of Rome. Italy enters World War II in 1940. By 1943, the Allies have landed in Sicily. Mussolini is arrested by his own king, but the Germans move in immediately. Rome falls under Nazi occupation. For 9 months, October 1943 to June 1944, Rome is occupied by German forces. October 16, 1943, the roundup of Roman Jews. Over 1,000 Roman Jews, many of whose families had lived in Rome since the time of Julius Caesar, the oldest Jewish community in Europe, are arrested and deported to Auschwitz. Fewer than 200 survive. June 4, 1944. American forces enter Rome. Cheering crowds flood the streets. Rome is free. 2 days later, June 6th, D-Day, Normandy. The city barely has time to celebrate before the world moves on. But Rome survived. Unlike so many other European cities, unlike Warsaw, like Dresden, like London during the Blitz, Rome emerged from World War II largely intact. A miracle, really. A deliberate one. Both the Allies and the Germans, for different reasons, chose not to bomb Rome into rubble. 2,700 years of history spared. Rome rises again, 1945 to 2000. The Italian economic miracle, il miracolo economico. Italy after the war is a nation in ruins, infrastructure destroyed, economy shattered, government in chaos. But something extraordinary happens. The Italians rebuild, fast. The 1950s and 60s, the miracolo economico, the Italian economic miracle, one of the fastest economic recoveries in history. Fiat, Olivetti, Pirelli, fashion houses, film studios. Italy becomes synonymous with style, design, food, cinema. Rome in the 1950s and 60s is electric. La dolce vita, the sweet life. Fellini films it. Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck ride through it on a Vespa in Roman holiday. The Trevi Fountain, the Spanish Steps, the Colosseum glowing at night. The world falls in love with Rome all over again. The city has been doing this for 2,700 years, making the world fall in love with it. And through it all, the Vatican, that tiny sovereign state within the city, continues to be the spiritual home of 1.3 billion Catholics worldwide. The Pope speaks from his window overlooking St. Peter's Square. Millions gather to listen. In an age of satellites and internet, a man in a white robe standing at a window still commands the attention of a significant fraction of humanity. Rome hasn't lost its power to awe. It's just changed the form. Late 20th century. Terrorism and transformation. The 1970s bring darkness. The years of lead. Anni di piombo. When left-wing and right-wing terrorist groups tear Italy apart with bombings and assassinations. The Red Brigades kidnap and murder former Prime Minister Aldo Moro in 1978. His body is found in the trunk of a car parked equidistant between the offices of the two main political parties. A calculated insult, a brutal message. But Italy endures this too, because that is what Rome does. It endures. Rome today, 2000 to 2026. The 21st century, the eternal city in the modern age. And here we are, 2026. Rome, population 3 million, capital of the Italian Republic, home to the Vatican, UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the most visited cities on Earth. Walk through Rome today and you will see something that exists nowhere else on the planet. A McDonald's around the corner from a 2,000-year-old temple. A metro line that keeps getting delayed because every time they dig, they find another ancient ruin, and work has to stop for archaeologists. Rome is a city that cannot escape its own past. Every layer of soil is a century. Every foundation is someone else's monument. They literally build on top of history here. Literally. The Colosseum still stands, still magnificent. 2,000 years old, and it gets 4 to 6 million visitors every year. The Pantheon, built in 125 AD, still has its original roof, still has the oculus, the hole in the dome, open to the sky. When it rains, the rain falls through the hole, hits the perfectly sloped floor, and drains away through ancient drains. Still working, after 1,900 years. Still working. Rome today grapples with modern challenges. Over-tourism, the stones of the ancient sites literally being worn down by millions of feet. Traffic and pollution that corrode marble that survived 2,000 years. Political instability. Italy has had over 60 governments since World War II. A brain drain of young people leaving for opportunity abroad. And yet, Romans still drink espresso standing at a bar at 7 in the morning arguing about football. Still gather in piazzas in the evening for the passeggiata, the evening stroll. Still cook pasta the way their grandmothers taught them. Still live in apartments where the foundations were laid when Augustus was emperor. There is a word in Italian, campanilismo, love of your bell tower, fierce local pride. Romans don't just live in Rome, they are Rome. They carry 2,779 years of identity in their bones.